Hey there, Razorback fans. I'm Sydney Limmerher, and I'm thrilled to be your host for today's exclusive interview featuring one outstanding athlete from the Arkansas Razorback gymnastics team. Meet Priscilla Park, a gymback whose incredible talent and dedication shine both on and off the mat. But before we dive into her stories, let's take a moment to shout out our sponsor, the Everett Auto Group. They're the driving force behind Buick's See Her Greatness campaign, celebrating the achievements and empowerment of female athletes. With locations in Benton, Bryant, and Rogers, the Everett Auto Group is all about supporting women's sports, and we are so grateful to have them on board. Now let's get down to business. As your host for today's interviews, I'm excited to guide you through the experiences and insights of Priscilla. As a former gymback myself, I know firsthand the dedication and hard work it takes to compete at the collegiate level. So I can't wait to hear what stories you have to share with us today. It's time to hear them and discover what truly makes you a champion on and off the mat. So without further ado, welcome, Scylla.
Thank you.
So excited to talk to you today. So could you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of how you got into gymnastics?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Georgia, kind of like right outside of Atlanta. And I've been doing gymnastics for over 11 years. So I started when I was right before I turned 8.
That's a little bit older for a gymnast.
Yeah, it actually is. My best friend growing up started gymnastics before I did. And so like when we were little on the trampoline, things like that, she would just like teach me how to do like a back handspring, just stuff like that. And eventually, I actually started to really like it, and my mom, like, more and more would see me going outside and, like, jumping on the trampoline every day, flipping around, and so that's how kind of we decided, like, why don't we try gymnastics?
Yeah, so you had a lot of energy, I'm assuming, as a kid? Yeah. So why did you pick Arkansas coming from Georgia?
Oh my gosh, okay. So Arkansas was one of those schools where I recruited with them on and off, and it was kind of like we stopped the recruiting process a little bit and then kind of came back around, and I did not know what to expect. I didn't even know where Arkansas was.
I didn't either.
I couldn't point it out to you on a map. Like, I had no clue what to expect, and I was like, you know what? Let me go, let me visit, let me see what it's like. And like the minute we landed and we kind of drove and got into Fayetteville, it was like so different than I expected. There was so much to do. I loved the college town. I loved the coaches first and foremost. Like, Jordan was just everything and more I wanted in my first college coach. So that was like a big deciding factor, but just the area and all of those little details too really helped.
Yeah, I remember when I came on my first visit and getting off the plane and it's like nothing. It's like cornfields. You're like, oh, this is exactly what I thought.
Yeah,
and then you get to Fayetteville and it's not.
Yeah, like when we first landed, I was like, oh no. Like, this is kind of like what I was just imagining Arkansas to be. And then we get into Fayetteville and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's much different. For the better, which is good. Can you share a pivotal moment in your career where you kind of realized, like, gymnastics is really like what I want to do? Obviously, our sport, you have to dedicate so much of your life, so making that decision, when did that really click for you?
I think there were probably multiple moments. I think when I was younger, it definitely clicked because I went through 2 different times when I was really young where I was having, some mental fear and things like that, and I really wanted to quit. And I would always like talk to my mom, tell her like after the season, like, I want to quit, I don't want to do this anymore. And I would persevere through the season. I would get through like the hard little hump, and then at the other side of it, I always was like, I'm so glad I didn't quit. Like, this is so rewarding. This was so worth it. And I'm so happy I pushed myself to the point where now I'm on the other side of it and I just feel like I accomplished so much. So I would say like when I was younger, that's when I really knew like, okay, like the reward that gymnastics brings is so much more than any of the hardship that it brings.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize, maybe they do, maybe they don't, gymnastics is such a mental sport. So like being able to get over that hump, like I went through so many of those phases where I was crying in the car on the way to practice, like I didn't want to go, and then the next week it was like, oh, I made nationals, and it was like, oh, it was all worth it. So I'm happy that you pushed through it because it led you here. So as a gymnast, this is a new question I haven't asked anyone else yet. Okay. What do you think is more important to your sport? Your attitude about it, or just like your technique and skill?
Your attitude, for sure. Like 100%. I think gymnastics has a lot of technique that goes into it,
Yeah.
and you'll have a lot of coaches that are very technical. But ultimately, your attitude and your drive and your willingness to want to push through the hard times and want to come in every day and work hard is what is going to get you as far as you want to go.
Yeah, I think in gymnastics there's a lot of burnout. Like I had so many teammates in club that like they just couldn't mentally get through it, and they like didn't have the attitude to get through it. So I totally see like that side of it is like you have to be in it to do gymnastics for the long haul.
You do. And it's like, it's not a bad thing either way. Like if it's not something that you feel like mentally you can't push through, it's not that that's like, oh, like you weren't mentally tough enough. It's really just that like that's how you know like this is not the sport for you.
Yeah, you need to figure something else out probably. Okay, so gymnastics, women's sports in general, is on such a big platform right now. I mean, we're talking about the women's basketball tournament, but then just with gymnastics as a sport, it's growing and growing. We're finally on ESPN, you know, with Livy Dunn and NIL. How do you think that social media can be utilized to really elevate women's sports, specifically gymnastics, in a positive light?
That's a good question. I think that, like you said, gymnastics is really, really growing, and a lot more people, especially on social media, are starting to pick it up. And I just think that social media is a gift, and it also has its not so good sides. But taking all the positives, like Livy Dunn, like everything she's doing with NIL, all the things that are just making our sport better and growing the community, just taking all those sides of it and continuing to push them on social media, I think that's going to be the best thing for the sport going forward. Like my platform, all my teammates' platforms, just encouraging young girls to go for their dreams, not be afraid to get out of their comfort zone. And I really think that's why gymnastics has gotten where it is and why it'll continue to go there.
And it's hard. We're in a sport where like no one gets it. They're like, what is this scoring? Why are they happy if they lost but they got a good score? So I think we as a sport in gymnastics, it's really important to like keep pushing that messaging. And like you said, you have a good platform for it now. So just continue to grow that over your 4 years. And speaking of that, like what advice would you give to maybe a fellow gymnast that's a little bit more frustrated? Maybe they're not at an SEC school and they don't have the platform you do, but they're still competing at the collegiate level. What advice would you give them about, you know, the lack of visibility and that they're discouraged? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that even if they're at a smaller school, somewhere that doesn't get as much coverage, keep pushing for that coverage. I know that it might seem like it's never going to get there, but we thought gymnastics would never be on like ESPN, and now it is. So it might be frustrating, I know it probably is, but don't stop pushing for what you want. The more you fight for something, the more that you're going to get it.
Yeah, we totally agree. I mean, you guys have like influencer now and all, like I didn't even have that 5 years ago, so it's crazy how much it's grown. So being patient, it's hard to be patient, but you have to be patient. Okay, couple fun questions here. So you are like game face, like if anyone watches Priscilla, she is so sweet and like happy all the time, but when she competes, like you remind me of myself. Like I was so serious when I competed.
So a lot of people tell me.
Yeah, you're like intimidating on the competition mat. So do you have like any superstitions or rituals that you do before the meet to get you in that zone?
I used to say no, but I think I've realized that I don't know if it's like a superstition, but I use there are 2 hair ties and 2 clips that I use for practice, and I use them every time we compete. Like I take them to away meets, I use them for home meets. Like it's not really so much a superstition, but it's one of those things where it's like I've done it for this long and it's worked, so like why stop?
No, that's not the craziest I've heard. Like I was probably one of the most superstitious gymnasts, so totally get it. Hair ties were definitely a part of my thing too.
You know, I have teammates that they have to sleep in the same pajamas every night before they compete.
Yep,
like,
I had that. That was me. So that was me on the team. Let's see. So who was your first female athlete you remember looking up to and watching? It doesn't have to be a gymnast, but it is. Just kind of explain how they impacted you.
I would honestly say Gabby Douglas, because before gymnastics, I really don't remember watching or like knowing about a lot of like women's sports. And then when I started gymnastics, that was kind of around the time when It was like the Gabby Douglas era. There was like the Gabby Douglas movie.
Yep.
And I remember when that movie came out, I watched it nonstop, and it, like, the motivation it gave me, like, after watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, when I was little and I was like, I'm gonna go to the Olympics, like, that's like a really big moment I remember, and like one person I specifically remember like kind of looking up to.
So you remember like Jordan's year of the Olympics.
Of course.
That has to be fun to kind of, that was what sparked it. Yeah, full circle moment.
It's crazy.
Okay, final question. We've kind of talked about it a little bit here, but how would you address any haters out there and advocate for greater recognition and respect for women's sports?
Don't listen to anyone that's hating on you. I know it's hard, and I know that there are going to be the comments that are there, and you're going to see them. But the more that you can, like, this is kind of what I do. If I get a hate comment on an Instagram thing, on anything about a meet, and I faced some of that this year, you can take it and you can let it affect you, and then you can also take it and be like, you know, whatever that person is, like, doing to me or saying to me, it's a reflection on how they feel about themselves and how they're living their life, and that's just not something that I want to let myself be weighed down by. So my best advice is to just not listen, and if you need to, make a joke out of it with your friends. Like, bring light to it, bring joy to it, because no one's opinion, if you know that what you're doing is what is making you happy, and you know that you're going down the path you're supposed to, no one's opinion matters. Like, no one in the world. And as long as you continue to have that mindset, and sometimes you're going to have to kind of fake it till you make it, like, you are going to come out on the other side of it realizing none of their opinions mattered.
Yeah, wow. Such wise words from a freshman. The fact that you know that now is so impressive. I just want to wish you all the best of luck. I'm so proud of you guys. Like, it makes me emotional.
I know.
I'm so excited to watch you continue on your career here at Arkansas, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that is a wrap for today's episode. I want to extend a massive thank you to the phenomenal Priscilla who joined us today. Your stories are the heart and soul of our podcast, and your greatness shines through in every word. I also want to express my gratitude to the Everett Auto Group for continuing to promote the See Her Greatness campaign with locations in Benton, Bryant, and Rogers. They're not just in the business of selling cars, they're champions of celebrating female excellence in sports. To my listeners, I can't thank you enough for tuning in and being a part of this empowering journey. Remember, you can catch up on all of our episodes and stay connected with the latest from Everett's See Her Greatness campaign by following us on social media. Until next time, keep believing in your greatness, keep striving for your dreams, and keep celebrating the incredible achievements of women in sports. This is Sydney Lemmerhurt signing off.